My problem with Lost in Translation. Lost in Translation is a 2003 romance/drama directed by Sofia Coppola. The film stars Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson. It's about two Americans lost in Tokyo, Japan, away from their lovers, yearning for connection in an unfamiliar place. On the surface, Lost in Translation seems like a harmless romance flick, right? Well, not so much. Not because the plot is problematic itself, but more so because of the characters, for a multitude of reasons. Before I continue, I want to give credit to the user Lord Infamous on Letterboxd. They wrote an extremely well thought out review on Lost in Translation, which partly inspired this video. I'll leave a link to their review in the description box below. So starting off here, I went into Lost in Translation inclined to like it. I was really excited for my first viewing experience. Lost in Translation is generally acclaimed by critics and blogs alike, and most of the time, my thoughts somewhat align with those of critics. Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson are big-time actors. Sofia Coppola, the director, is the daughter of legendary filmmaker Francis Ford Coppola, who directed the classic Godfather series. But from the onset, something felt a little off. That thing that felt off was the main character, Bill Murray's character, Bob Harris. Bob Harris is someone who's having a midlife crisis. As he gets older, his notoriety as an actor is waning, as well as his ego, apparently. He carries himself with a certain feeling of passive aggressiveness. The way in which he interacts with people, especially the Japanese citizens, gives you an impression that he feels like he always has something better to be doing. Now, inherently, do I think that these things make Bob a terrible person? No. Everyone has times where they're extremely irritable or fed up with people in general. All of us have been there. There's nothing wrong with just wanting to be left alone occasionally. But my problem with Bob's actions begin when they start to manifest themselves in forms of racism, microaggressions, and ignorance. Generally, Bob is extremely dismissive of the Japanese people he encounters and communicates with. This all started when he first arrived in Tokyo. When he's greeted by a group of people welcoming him to the city and his hotel, he makes a rude remark towards the lady who initially greeted him. He says,
"Great, short and sweet. Very Japanese, I like that."
Which I just don't understand, like, what is that supposed to even mean? Other than that, he doesn't say much other than a half-hearted thank you here and there. Obviously, there's a language barrier there between the two, but something just doesn't feel quite right when he's interacting with them. This behavior, unfortunately, continues throughout the entire movie, basically. After he meets Charlotte, his love interest in the film, he mocks Japanese people doing their best to speak English when he notices that Charlotte injured her toe.
Well, you either go to a doctor or you leave it here. He's smiling. You like that idea? They love black toe over in this country. Gotta be, this country, somebody's gotta prefer a black toe. Black toe. We should probably hang around until someone orders it.
This scene in particular is uncomfortable for several reasons. Bob calls Charlotte's black toe brack toe, essentially mocking how he thinks Japanese people would sound trying to pronounce black toe. That in itself is a callback to something that happened earlier in the movie.
Roger Moore.
Roger Moore. You know Roger Moore?
Roger Moore?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's where I'm guessing Bob gets the inspiration to mock Japanese people doing their best to speak English from, because with Roger Moore and Lodger Moore and black toe and brack toe, the R and the L is interchangeable. Going back to the scene that I was talking about, I also love how Charlotte is sitting next to him and just laughing the entire time like prime Dave Chappelle is in the middle of a comedy set. Clearly, he's a comedic genius at work. This pattern of conduct continues in the same exact scene like I already showed you. You can see there's a chef standing right in front of Bob and Charlotte, and clearly he doesn't understand English or their conversation. But still, Bob goes out of his way to point out, look, he's smiling, and hey, what's with the straight face? Even though Bob is literally getting paid more money to be in Tokyo than most of us will ever see in our lifetimes, he acts like it's a hellhole the entire time and expresses how badly he just wants to leave.
I gotta get out of here as soon as I can.
As if staying in a nice hotel in a different country for a few days so you can add on to your presumably already plentiful wealth is so terrible. Obviously, Bob doesn't have to love staying in Tokyo, but maybe it wouldn't be such a big deal if he didn't make the Japanese people paying him millions of dollars the butt of so many of his jokes. If all of this wasn't repulsive enough, he's still rude even to people who look like him. More towards the beginning of the film, Bob is noticed by a couple of fans at a bar. The fans compliment Bob. In his response,
"Bob Harris? You're awesome, man!"
Sunset Odds. Loved it.
Man, that car chase, I couldn't believe it. Did you do your own driving?
I did.
We're here in business. Later.
See you, Bob.
Keep it up.
Like I said already, it's okay to want to be left alone. For that reason, I was debating whether or not I should keep this part of the video in or not, but clearly I decided to keep it in. Because, if you want to be left alone so badly, then why are you putting yourself in a public setting, where the chances of you getting noticed as a famous person are significantly higher? It's all just off-putting. Obviously, main characters are often never perfect and anti-heroes do exist, but what reason are we given to care about Bob? He gives off the impression that he's a selfish and ignorant person. Why are we supposed to feel bad for him? How are we supposed to empathize with him? Bob isn't like the normal, everyday, average person. He's a movie star. Even if he's somewhat washed up, we can still assume he's made as much money as he would ever need, especially if he's still getting paid to do commercials and photo shoots for products in different countries. Also, I'm not sure how I feel about Lost in Translation being so well received, especially from a majority American audience. I'd hope it'd be common sense, but Bob's actions in this film aren't okay. I'm afraid that these actions without appropriate kickback would start to be almost normalized in a way, if microaggressions and mocking accents aren't normalized already. Why is a movie broadcasting this type of unchecked behavior to millions of people? I mean, especially a romance movie? I don't know about you, but I don't find anything romantic about a middle-aged, seemingly racist, past his prime movie star who acts like he's better than everybody else. But hey, that's just me, I guess. One of the only redeeming qualities of Bob Harris is his chemistry with Charlotte. But unfortunately, even that gets ruined because Scarlett Johansson was only 17 years old during filming. How old was Bill Murray, you ask? In his early 50s. Knowing that, how could you like or appreciate Lost in Translation as a film? That fact alone made for an extremely uncomfortable rewatching experience for me, as I wasn't aware of it in my initial viewing. But how we feel as viewers watching the movie isn't nearly as important as how an underage Scarlett Johansson might have felt filming it. Literally, the first shot of the movie is a close-up of Scarlett Johansson in her panties. I can't help but wonder who signed off on that. How did the people on set making this movie think that it was okay? That's beyond me. There are other shots in the movie as well where Charlotte is prancing around her room in her panties. I don't get it. It's just all so unnecessary. There's another scene in this movie where Bob and Charlotte are laying in bed together that really tests your patience. They get really intimate and you don't know what might happen next. Luckily, all they do is talk and nothing more, as you, the watcher, can let out a deep exhale. Even the age difference of the characters in the movie is sort of alarming. Charlotte seems to be in her early 20s and she mentions in the film she just graduated college. Bob, on the other hand, is clearly aging and mentions he's been married for 25 years. Oh, and he has a family, by the way. Look, I know both characters are adults and can make their own decisions concerning who they're intimate with. All I want to know is why Charlotte had to be so young and why Bob had to be so old. Even if Bob isn't as old as the real Bill Murray was at the time, why couldn't you have gotten someone a little bit younger? Why did ScarJo as a 17-year-old have to be casted? That's all I want to know. The casting choices are definitely at the very least a little questionable, and maybe even predatory to an extent, considering Scarlett Johansson was unknown as an actor at the time. If you were a young, aspiring actor with little movie credibility and experience, would you turn down the biggest acting opportunity of your life at the time? Probably not. But on the bright side, at least it worked out for her. ScarJo is virtually a household name at this point. Another one of my major gripes with this movie is the lazy depiction of Japan and Japanese people. They're portrayed as nothing but background noise for our two American superstars. Like Lord Infamous pointed out in his review, Japan and its people are just a plot device for Bob and Charlotte to interact with one another. Maybe this wouldn't be such a problem had Bob treated the Japanese people he encountered like actual human beings. Instead, the movie gives credence to the way he acts. Why would Bob's character care about them when the entire movie itself doesn't? The casual brushing off of Japanese people is accepted. It's really a shame all of these problems exist and rear their ugly heads, because if you ignore all of it, and the more power to you if you can. Lost in Translation is a good romance film, but just acting like those issues aren't apparent is irresponsible as a viewer, in my opinion. It's fine if you don't agree. Outside of the racism and ignorance that just had to be included, the writing is actually not that bad. The movie itself, devoid of context, isn't terrible. It's just plagued by dumb writing decisions. I can see why people could love this movie. As a setting, you really can't go wrong with Tokyo. A couple of the few things I actually liked about this film is the way it's shot and its pacing. The goodbye scene at the end of the movie is pretty great as well. But in general, Lost in Translation's flaws drastically outweigh its few positives. As a film, it has way too many problems I just can't and won't ignore. If you made it this far, then thank you so much. I really hope you enjoyed what I had to say and that you enjoyed this video. If you like videos like these, I make videos about movies and music, stuff like that, then I would suggest you subscribe. Don't forget to leave a like, comment telling me if you agree or disagree with my stance. Do you like this movie or not? And until next time, I'll see you soon.
All of my own, doing shit solo. You can't come